Hello everyone and welcome back to another round of Tuesday Night Legacy. Tonight's is pretty quick for you. We've got Naya, Saga, Maverick on the left and Death Shadow on the right. If you are a fan of the channel, you are probably familiar with the player on the left. Ben is our resident Maverick innovator. He has brought to the table something a little bit different this time, as he does every week. What's so fun about having Ben on the channel is that even though he does have a lot of pieces that go into a Maverick shell, a green-white Maverick shell, he is constantly innovating, adding new things and trying them out week by week. This week, we've added Initiative. Ben is going for 4 White Plume Adventurer as well as the newest best 2-drop from the Warhammer set, the Mawlock. We got 4 of those guys in here. And then the rest of it is pretty much what he's been running. We have the Knight of the Reliquary, of course, to take advantage of all of the lands that are in this deck. We have 4 Green Sun Zenith that are going to go and find any of the green creatures that we want to have. Something that stuck around from the last few iterations of this deck is the Ether Sworn Canonist main. Down to 3 of those now instead of the full 4 set, so maybe seeing a little less combo at the store at the moment. Of course, Minsk and Boo makes the list because it is quickly becoming one of the best planeswalkers in the format. And this particular list does run Urza's Saga, which is going to be able to go and find you your Shadow Spear out of the main board and maybe a Haywire Might in case there's some artifact or enchantment that's running around that you still need to deal with. This is one of the more fair decks in Legacy. This is trying to win simply by outgrinding your opponent and winning through combat damage. On the other side of the board, we have Pedro coming in with Death Shadow. Death Shadow is a pretty fun deck that was ported from Modern. This is all about using your life as a resource and getting as close to dead as possible without actually quite getting there, because you want to grow this Death Shadow as big as possible. Perhaps even a 12-12. But something that is pretty fun with the Death Shadow is you can run this enchantment, Dress Down, which will take away that text box and just make your Death Shadow a 13-13 for the turn, being able to attack for huge out of nowhere, and hopefully winning the game through combat damage that way. Now, of course, this being a blue-black deck, it has all kinds of ways to find the cards that you want, some Ponders, some Preordains, always the Brainstorm, but what this deck is trying to do, of course, is protect its aggro strategy, so we are running the playset of Daze and Force of Will. And another card that has been gaining more and more popularity despite its age is Snuff Out. Free spells have always been good in Legacy, and I guess Snuff Out, for whatever reason, just had been cruising under the radar for a while. We know our resident online player, Newton, has been really pushing the Snuff Out in his Elves build, and it seems like it's catching on with the rest of the world. So probably going to see some Snuff Outs being able to take care of some non-black creatures at instant speed with a no mana. All right, that's going to be enough about the decks. Let's go ahead and get these games started. So we have Ben on the play here. Yeah, here we go. So starting with a Wooded Foothills. Pedro just starting out, cycling that Street Wraith, going down to 18, down to 16 with a, what is that, a Watery Grave. Just using the Shock land in Legacy because, you know, you want to lose that life. And he does still run some Underground Seas as well, depending on if the fetch is necessary. You don't always want to be shocking things into play. I believe that was a Ponder from Pedro. And we're just kind of passing back and forth here. That Gaia's Cradle, not the best at the moment since there's no creatures in play. Ben firing off a Wasteland on the Watery Grave. We're seeing a Cycle Street Wraith in response, and then also a Brainstorm using that floating blue mana. This is all in response to the Wasteland trigger. That Wasteland's out of here. I think Ben's passing back the turn, not really having anything to do. And shuffling it up, getting that Wasteland into play, or the Watery Grave into play tapped. Seeing another Brainstorm from Pedro, just really trying to find the right cards here. Ben not having huge plays either. Since he's only able to generate 1 mana right now, I think Ben would really benefit from maybe a top deck Birds of Paradise or potentially an Ignoble Hierarch or the Noble Hierarch. All would be fine, just to generate some extra mana here. We see Pedro already down to 12. And we're going to cast a Thoughtseize. So Swords to Plowshares. Looked like a White Plume Adventurer, Mawlock, and an Endurance. So, yeah, Ben a little caught here on mana. Not really being able to get anything into play. Losing that Swords is really tough since that Murktide region is coming in as a 6/6. But Ben did draw the Swords to Plowshares off the top. Having Pedro go back up to 17 here. So kind of a little bit of threat deployed. Deal with threat. Oh, that's so sad. Ben does have 3 lands in play, but Gaia's Cradle not tapping for anything right now. So no White Plume Adventurer for him. I wonder if he's thinking about just putting Mawlock into play. And we're seeing another Thoughtseize. I think maybe Ben could have Enduranced there to create a mana for that moment and then played the White Plume Adventurer. I think he was thinking about that. I would have burned his whole hand, though. So decided to wait and unfortunately lost the White Plume Adventurer to the Thoughtseize. Did finally find some mana, getting Endurance into play, tucking Pedro's graveyard to stop any potential other Murktide regions for the moment, and getting 3 damage in across. Pedro says, "Can I read this guy?" Yeah, sure. Kind of a weird one. Losing the Gaia's Cradle here off of the Wasteland. Pedro not having really anything else in hand. Looks like he's got a Force of Will, and not sure what else. Aethersworn Canonist off the top. Gurmag Angler, Force of Will. Not sure what the last card is, but Aethersworn Canonist is going to slow the game down, even though Pedro isn't doing a whole lot as far as casting multiple spells in a turn. But at least Aethersworn Canonist makes it so that, you can't gain extra advantage since you're down to only 1 non-creature spell a turn. Or non-artifact spell, excuse me. With Pedro down to 3, it's not looking great. Pedro's going to go down to 2 here. I think he's going to try and put that Gurmag Angler into play, hoping that it won't die to the Mawlock. Decides, we'll just move on. Move on to game 2. And so here we are, just a ponder from Pedro, starting the match. At least 1 Force of Will there. There's a Cycle Street Wraith, a Brainstorm. Looks like a Brazen Borrower. Brazen Borrower. Paying 1. Playing Explore? What do we got here? This should be in the list. Oh, I think it's a Carpet of Flowers. Yes, in fact it is. Pedro saying no thanks. Looks like a Force of Will pitching the Stubborn Denial. That would have been a lot of extra mana for Ben on each turn, seeing as every single one of Pedro's tappable mana sources produce blue. He might run a swamp or 2. Check the list here. No swamps. So, yeah, I think Pedro just made the right call there, trying to deny that extra mana to Ben. Another Ponder, and passing it back. Seeing as we are only on turn 2 here, and there's already 5 cards in the yard for Pedro, so we could see a Murktide region coming down. Ooh, so an Endurance, getting rid of Minsk and Boo, getting rid of that graveyard, trying to stop Pedro from being able to deploy his big threats, since he does run the Gurmag Angler and the Murktide Regent. Ben's got a Saga in play here now. Might be able to make... Oh, nope, that was just a quick draw pass. So Ben kind of, unfortunately, not going to get as much advantage from the Urza Saga as a player usually would, since you need 2 mana plus the Saga to make the Construct tokens. But he will be able to get his 0 or 1 drop artifact here in a second. And if he brought something in from the sideboard, doesn't look like he's got any side pieces, so it's just the Shadow Spear that's going to come in here. A lot of mana being spent. Just a Murktide Regent, only one counter, so just a 4/4 boy. Floating some mana from the Urza Saga, getting a little bit of colorless. There's the Shadow Spear, the only choice. And I guess this is just a pass. So Murktide crunching in for 4, and we pass it right back. These are some quick turns here. No draw pass, no draw pass. Or no land pass, excuse me. Ben in some trouble here. We do this 2 more turns and that's it. Yeah, terrible hands. Ben just stuck on a lot of nothing. So we are into game 3. Just a couple of fetch lands to start. Pedro going for the Watery Grave into a Grafdigger's Cage. The Grafdigger's Cage, stopping creatures from entering the battlefield from the library. This is going to shut off all the Green Sun Zeniths in Ben's deck. A pretty good artifact. Also going to shut down any graveyard shenanigans. That's not really relevant here, though. No flashback spells. No Autochron Worms. So mostly just for the Green Sun Zenith. Thoughtseize is probably going to catch Minsk and Orbu. We see a Pyroblast and 4 lands. So Ben kind of having the opposite problem that he was having from last game. There's that Death Shadow down to a 3/3. A second Death Shadow deployed. So if there's like one cycling effect here or anything losing 2 life, that could have... Well, this is probably going to be the game here. Seeing some fetches. Ben hoping to grab anything. Let's see here. Moloch, maybe good enough? Yeah, for 5. Ignoble Hierarch with a Shadow Spear on it. A Noble Hierarch, a Fatal Push, and I think that's going to wrap up the game here. Oh, down to 3. Okay. What's it going to be? Is it going to be a Moloch? It is. So this is a 5/5, killing the Death Shadow. Oh, but there's a Snuff out, and that's going to snuff out any hopes of Ben clawing that game back. Pedro takes it 2-1. A fun and quick back and forth between the tempo deck and the mid-range deck, but it looks like some of those free spells really came in handy for Death Shadow, so Pedro being able to take it away from Ben at the last second. As always, thanks for stopping by. I hope you enjoyed the commentary. If this is your first time here, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel. It really helps us out. Something new that we've added is there is an official Tuesday Night Legacy Instagram where you can actually check out pictures of the deck lists. If you want a link to the deck list, they are always in the description of the video found below. Thanks as always to Spellhold Games for allowing us to record in their play space. And if you want, you can join us for live commentary on Tuesday nights. We do live commentary on the 1st and 3rd Tuesdays of the month. The 2nd and 4th are just the game streaming, so if that is something that you're into, you can join us for that too. And if you've stuck around this long, we are ending the voting for the next video in the next day or so. It looks like it's tied right now for Blue-Red Delver versus Blue-Black Doomsday and Jeskai Days Undoing versus 4-Color Ligmapile. So hopefully we'll get one more vote so I don't have to do both videos. And if I do have to do both videos, that's fine too. It'll just take a little bit longer. And we'll see you next time here at Tuesday Night Legacy. Bye.